What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. I would like to discuss with you 1943. I've often discussed with you conversations that I had with my dad and granddad and many other old timers and trainers and fighters who fought during those eras. We met them at gymnasiums and other affairs. I would often go to nursing homes. I've been through many of them to visit old fighters. They've told me stories themselves. Been to meetings and gatherings where old fighters would show. And for some reason, 1943 would usually be the topic of discussion. 1943, you had many great fighters who performed during that time. There were fights such as January 7th, when Jimmy Bivens would step in the ring weighing 175 pounds. He would defeat Ezzard Mac Charles, who walked in the ring weighing 165 pounds. The contest was scheduled for 10 rounds and was at the Cleveland, Ohio Arena. 10,355 spectators would witness. The referee stopped the contest 25 minutes and 10 seconds into the 10th round. Ezzard Charles would be KO'd by Jimmy Bivens. Jimmy Bivens would walk into the ring often weighing 168 pounds, and Ezzard Charles would walk into the ring weighing 165 pounds. Now, Bivens would go as high as 175 pounds, and Ezzard Charles would weigh 182 pounds. He would win a heavyweight championship contest in 1949, when he would defeat Jersey Joe Walcott. That contest was appointed by the Brown Bomber Joe Louis. Ezzard Charles would become the heavyweight champion of the world. Now, he would solidify that title in 1950, when he would take on the Brown Bomber himself, Joe Louis. And Ezzard Charles, just recently, will be highly appreciated, along with Charlie Burley and the Black Murderers Row. But they were often overlooked. Not in their time, of course, but as time went by. It's exciting to me to know that Ezzard Charles, and of course, Jersey Joe Walcott, but Charlie Burley and the Black Murderers Row and many others are now highly being appreciated. My dad would discuss with me about bouts. March 31st, 1943, when Lloyd Marshall would knock out Ezzard Mac Charles, Cincinnati Cobra, at the Cleveland, Ohio Arena. Lloyd Marshall would knock out Ezzard Charles in the 8th round, and referee Jackie Davis would raise the hand of Lloyd Marshall. Ezzard Charles was dropped and slipped 7 times that contest. 3rd round, 5th round, and the 8th round. Lloyd Marshall weighed 165 pounds, Ezzard Charles weighed 168 pounds. And the bout was scheduled for 10 rounds. 10,537 contest spectators would witness a ring classic. My God. May 21st, 1943, Augusta, Georgia's Sidney Walker, better known as Bo Jack, he would lose a 15-round decision to the Bobcat, Bob Montgomery. It would be in defense of one of 4 contests between those two men. The World Lightweight Championship, New York Sac version of it, was on the line in front of 15,000 fight fans. They shouted and screamed with every breath they would have, because that contest was a whirlwind. New York's Madison Square Garden would be the house where that contest would be held. And the famous referee Arthur Donovan had the assignment, along with George Marty Monroe. And they would favor the Philadelphia native, the Bobcat, Bob Montgomery. Stories that really intrigued me. They really intrigued me when my dad would discuss those stories with me. June 8, 1943, Cleveland, Ohio's light heavyweight, Jimmy Bivens, would stop Black Murderers Row light heavyweight, Lloyd Marshall. Now, Lloyd Marshall was out of Cincinnati. And Jimmy Bivens was out of Cleveland. Boy, I'll tell you. Ohio had some light heavyweights, man. They had Joey Maxim and Lloyd Marshall. They would have Ezzard Charles at some point when he was light heavyweight. Jimmy Bivens, Harry Bobo, Sammy Baruti. Oh, you had some good ones. You had some good ones. But 2 minutes and 42 seconds into the 13th round, Jimmy Bivens would stop Lloyd Marshall. It was in front of 18,448 spectators. Oh, they screamed at the top of their lungs. Collectively, they would pay $61,195 for that contest. Now, Marshall would go down in the first and the sixth round. Bivens had a right hand, I'll tell you. Marshall was dropped in the 9th and the 12th as well, with left hooks and uppercuts. Lloyd Marshall weighed 164 pounds, and he lost in the 4th round due to a low blow. Jimmy Bivens stood 5 foot 9 inches, had a 76-inch reach. Lloyd Marshall stood 5 foot 10 inches, and he had a 74.5-inch reach. These two men would be, in my opinion, part of the Black Murderers Row. Now, you don't quite often hear about Jimmy Bivens and Ezzard Charles, Archie Moore, as part of Black Murderers Row. Maybe because they were champions, although Jimmy Bivens was the duration of light heavyweight and heavyweight champion when Joe Louis was in the war. But you also had Alan Faulkner and Detroit's O'Neal Bell, Broadway, a fighter who is not quite often thought of as Black Murderers Row. But as our discussion will continue, I will name some names for you that will blow your mind. And they can all be part of that category of fighters who were avoided, fighters who had to take dives, fighters who were threatened. Their families were threatened. Sometimes the managers didn't even know about it. And when these fighters would go take a shower, there'd be someone in the shower waiting for them with a switchblade. Sometimes right before they left the mop closets or locker rooms. As they were walking down the aisle, a note would be handed to the manager. Tonight is not your night. And they would do what is called a chicken wire routine, where they would place a chicken wire in the mouth guard because a fighter was too stubborn to take a dive. Or should I say he was too proud. He had honor and dignity and knew he could defeat the fighter he was scheduled to take a dive for. He scheduled 10 seconds before he walked into the ring. The chicken wire would be designed so when a punch would land in the mouth of the fighter who did not want to take the dive, he would bleed profusely in the mouth and the referee would be forced to stop the contest. That's one of many things that took place during those years. August 27th of 1943, a 22-year-old young man by the name of Ray Robinson was a 4-1 favorite in Harlem. He was a ranked welterweight contender. Defeated former 3-weight division Hall of Famer Hammerin' Hank Armstrong, who was 30 years old. Ray Robinson walked into the ring weighing 149 pounds and Armstrong weighed 140. It was in front of 15,371 spectators. They were very upset and very angry because Henry Armstrong was someone who they looked up to. I mean, let's face it, Madison Square Garden, where this contest was held, is where Henry Armstrong would become the first Black American featherweight champion in boxing history. He was the second black fighter to win that title of any kind as a black man in New York's Madison Square Garden. He would also win the lightweight championship crown from the Jickamaya Hurricane, Lou Ambers. Henry Armstrong was a legend. Ray Robinson would open up the Garden on the night of October 4th, 1940, on the undercard of Henry Armstrong and Fitzy Zivit, who, by the way, Fitzy Zivit was not supposed to fight Armstrong. Coco Kid was supposed to fight Armstrong. Armstrong was a fighter. Eddie Mead was his manager. And they would shuffle these fighters around, sometimes without the fighters knowing. And Coco Kid and Charlie Billy were both kept away from Henry Armstrong. Because Henry Armstrong was a very brave man. He would have fought any one of them. But the style wouldn't have matched up. If Eddie Mead wanted to make more money off of Armstrong, he had to point Henry Armstrong in a direction that would continue